What we're doing today, we're covering a couple of subjects. So we've got Richard from Alphaletz, who's just going to be giving you a presentation on what he does there. And then later on, we're going to be talking about the white paper and how it can affect you. And we've got, where is he? Ross down there. So he's going to join us for that as well. So, Richard, if you're happy, we've got share screen on. So I'll just stay. I'm just turn my microphone off in a minute, but just make sure you're okay with that before I turn it off.
Lovely. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, here we go. Hopefully you'll be able to
yeah,
see.
Yeah, that's fine. We can see it. So you're absolutely fine.
So thank you very much, Peter. Just to let everyone know, I'm technically on holiday today, but I didn't want to miss this one because I've been working with Peter, really impressed with what he's doing, and you know, it's always nice to be invited to these sort of things. So thank you very much. And I'm actually a long-time landlord myself. I've built up quite a nice portfolio over, I don't know how long now, 25 years, something like that, I suppose. And but I'm also from a software background. So for years, I was struggling to find, probably like most people, find a solution to optimize my portfolio. And so that's what Alphaletz is all about, and I'll show you a little bit about that. And also one thing we've done for Ihouse members is we've just set up a discount code. So if anybody is interested in the product, there's an extra 5% off, which we're going to hold open till the end of tonight. If for any reason you can't get on tonight, let me know, and I'll see if I can extend that. But we're going to try and keep that to a minimum. So, but anyway, before I get into that, like many landlords, a lot of you may be able to relate to this because this was certainly my world. I started off using spreadsheets, and this is a real spreadsheet that we got from one of our recent landlords. And in fact, it spread over 3 screens, but it was so big I couldn't get it all on one screen, so I had to cut it down. So you're only actually seeing a third of the actual spreadsheet. And you can see that as his portfolio was growing, it just became more and more complicated. So on the right-hand side in the yellow bit, that's all the dates he was trying to remember. Plus, obviously, this isn't the actual account numbers and the real addresses, but the format is exactly as it was when I received it. So like many landlords, that's how I started off. And then I realized that, you know, as things became a little more complex, I needed a database so I could keep all my tenant records, and I needed some accounting software. So I started using QuickBooks, and then I was using Xero. Then I had a task management system to try and remind myself of when things were due. And then I had a file storage system, which I use Dropbox, which is really good, but it was yet another system that I had to use to try and to try and manage my platform. So, and the trouble with this is that they don't talk to each other. So your spreadsheet doesn't talk to your accounting software, or at least not to your task management system. Your database probably doesn't talk to your file storage, and so on. So I ended up with 5 completely separate systems that weren't even built for a landlord, but I had to try and make them work for for being a landlord. And also these things didn't talk to each other. And of course, they weren't cloud-based in the main. Some of them were, some of them weren't. There was no mobile device. So we also have a mobile app as well, which is something people really like about the system. And also the worst thing was that my wife and I used to use this system together, and she would update a file and then I would update the wrong one, and then we were all out of sync. So it just became a bigger and bigger nightmare as, you know, as we tried to grow our portfolio. And also, you know, being a landlord now is probably harder than it's ever been. In fact, I'm sure Peter will be talking about the white paper and the proposals he's making. But you know, just if we just look at what's been going on in the last 4 or 5 years, you've probably seen your costs skyrocket by, and I'm not even talking about inflation. This is just stuff like, you know, you can't charge tenant fees anymore. There's no wear and tear allowance. There's more regulation and stuff that we have to do that we never used to have to do. So that alone is pushing costs up. Fines are just getting crazy. Every day now I'm reading about somebody else who's, you know, yet another landlord fine. the tenant management, as we've seen, it's like a pendulum. It's gone way too far over in a lot of ways, that now the tenant has so many rights and so much protection that if you don't keep good notes and you don't have good records, you can lose a lot of money and a lot of time in trying to get tenants out. And the other thing is that digital records are going to become a legal requirement. So when we look at things like making tax digital, which is less than 2 years away, it doesn't affect everybody from stage one, but it will do at some point, then this stuff is just becoming more and more complex. So what we did, well, actually, before I show you that, the other question is why now? And cloud computing, I think, has really come of age in the last 3 or 4 years. I think everyone now is probably using some sort of cloud computing, even if it's just on your phone. But the beauty of it is that with cloud, you can get access from anywhere. So here I am, I'm in Ireland, I'm not at my home office, but I can get all my data just as if I was sitting at my desktop at home. I've got, we can integrate with banks now. So we have the full integration with open banking. We have a fabulous mobile app, which you can download from the App Store and try that out for free. Tax simplification, I mentioned making tax digital, and just the amount of data that we have to manage now and store is just becoming more complex. So Alphaletz is about bringing all that together. I sort of designed this and based on my own experience as being a landlord. And now we have well over 1,000 users on our platform, and I'm getting better and better feedback. So the more users we get on the platform, the more good ideas we get, and obviously we keep incorporating those into the platform. So now we have, we've worked very, very hard on the user experience, which I'll show you in a moment, because we want it to be really, really simple and friendly to use, whilst in the background it's very powerful and there's lots of algorithms and reporting and so on. But from a user experience, the secret to successful software is to make it easy and add incredible value. So I'll come on to the plans at the end, but a lot of people say, well, this is great, how much is it? And so I put this slide up just to show you right up front. A lot of people think this is a monthly price. It's not. This is actually the annual price. So for just £100 for the whole year, you can start off with 4 properties. And then if you want to add more properties, it's £1 a month on top of that. If you have 10 or more properties, it's 150. And as I say, we've got this extra code here. All right, so let me jump into the demo so everyone can see exactly what this system is. So here's our website. So you can read a little bit about what Alphaletz does. And then there's 2 buttons here. One is getting started, so you can log in and try the system out completely free. And if you've done that, there's a login button here. And when you log in, you'll see a dashboard that looks a little bit like this. Let me try and clear this out of the way. There we go. So as you can see, the design, everybody loves the design because we've worked really hard on that to keep it simple, as I mentioned before. And this really helps you manage your entire portfolio. So right at the top, you can see your rent, you can see your expenses that have come in, all your tasks in the system. You can set up a task for anything. It can be maintenance, insurance, rent reviews, whatever it might be, and they'll stop popping up right in the middle of the screen as they become due. If they become overdue, then you'll get a little warning here as well, and then you can click on these tasks and you can read notes, you can add notes to it, you can reset reminders, and you can set all sorts of labels as well here to make it very easy to find these notes. And then down the bottom, you've got something that we all hate, but unfortunately is a fact of life. We do have tenants that go into arrears. So we put that right here on the front page as well. So for instance, I could click on this and it would give me the detail of the arrears that this particular tenant owes. You can see your occupancy, especially for bigger landlords. It's really useful just to keep a track on empty properties or part tenanted properties if you have HMOs, for example. And you can also see your cash flow down here at the bottom as well. You can also search by particular owner. So if you have, I know a lot of landlords, especially the bigger ones, might have properties in a limited company and you might have some in your own name. So for example, I could click on my own portfolio. This is just a demo account, but it'll give you an idea. And you'll notice that the whole dashboard dynamically update with the properties that are specific to me. We do have some letting agents now that use the product, and they like to manage other people's landlord. They like to manage other landlord portfolios as well. So that's another way you could, you could set up your different landlords in here. And in the same way, you can do it by property. So if you just had one property and I wanted to look at the health of Canal Street, for example, you'll notice again, the whole dashboard. I can see instantly that, what my expenses are and what my income is for Canal Street. Might want to think about selling Canal Street because it doesn't look too profitable down here. But again, it's the information you've got right at your fingertips. So you can see it with a few clicks. Now, on the property side, we have a property screen here. You can scroll down here and you can see all the different properties that are in your portfolio. This works for single lets or HMOs. It doesn't matter what type of properties you manage, even commercial as well. And you can see instantly that this particular HMO, we've got 3 of tenanted units. So if I click on the little down arrow here, I can also see that I've got some overdue payments. That one looks like it's been paid. And then I've got a vacant unit down here as well. So again, at a glance, I can see exactly where I am with each particular property. As tenancies come to an end, I'll get a little warning here. So I can see the tenancy on this one is ending in 2 days. This one's ending in 53 days. And, again, all that information is right here at my fingertips. Now, I won't go through every single feature of the app because I know we're a little bit pushed for time, but some of the things that people really like is things like the bank integration. So now, instead of having to try and keep records on your spreadsheets and so on, you can hook up to your bank. It takes about 1 minute to sync up to an account. And what we'll do is we'll pull in all the data going back 2 years in time. So all these transactions that you can see here will automatically be pulled into the product. And then as they come in, you can then reconcile them. So I can say, okay, that expense here, I could say, okay, that's an expense for, and then I pick who the, who the supplier is, and I can then link it to a property or not. It could be a general expense, for example. So I could link that to Canal Street. I could put in the category as well, which makes tax returns so simple because everything gets categorized in the right places. And then I hit save expense, and that category is now, that expense is now categorized and it's saved in the system. So now that will start showing up on all my reports, on my dashboard, and again, all my information is right there at the touch of a button. You can link as many accounts as you want. We sync up to over 11,000 financial institutions worldwide. So even if you're not, I know everyone here is the UK, but we do have people in other countries who are also using our app and syncing to their accounts as well. And then when you're ready, you can then print off, you can export all this information. So when it comes to things like tax time, you can pick the properties that you want. You can either select them all, or you can do it by ownership, like a limited company, as I was saying before, or your own name. And then you can export all that information back to our beloved spreadsheet if you want it on a spreadsheet, or as a PDF report. And you can even run statements. So if you wanted to give a statement to a tenant, or if you're managing other landlords, then you could give them statements as well in the same way. So I'm just going to pause there because I know I covered quite a lot in a fairly short space of time, and I wanted to make sure that I keep on track. So I'll pause there on the demo. Peter, I don't know if there's any questions that you wanted to read out.
Bank integration. Do you need a separate account for your property activity?
No, everything is in here. So once you've linked your bank account, you just reconcile those payments to the property, and then everything is in the system exactly as you see it here.
But presumably it keeps it nice and neater and easier if you've got a separate bank account, because otherwise you're going to be bringing, if it's anything like zero, you're bringing every transaction over. Because it can't differentiate, can it? So
yeah, that's right. Well, what you can do is when you go into the bank feeds, if there's a transaction which is nothing to do with your properties, like let's say you've accidentally bought a new pair of shoes and you bought it on your property account, you can just exclude the payment here, and then it takes it off your balance sheet basically.
Yeah.
So that way.
That's good stuff. So I've got Oh,
Yeah.
right. How does it cope with serviced accommodation and holiday lets is another question just come up.
Yeah, we can do that as well. We can do holiday lets in the same way. You just tell it that it's a holiday let. You would put the income in probably as a short term. So when we set up a tenancy agreement, it automatically schedules in all the payments, so you don't have to type it in every month, and then you can just reconcile it from the bank. But if it was a holiday let, let's say it was just a 3-day let, then you can just put that in as a one-off income payment, and the system will handle that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So we don't have any other questions at the moment on there. So
Okay.
is there anything else you want to show? Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
Can you have differing percentage ownerships of properties? Is it still able to work out on the tax return figure? So in other words, Colin, do you want to come online and just explain that a little bit more?
I think I know what Colin means, actually.
All right, okay.
I think so. So Colin, I think what you mean is, so basically if you have different own, let's say you own it jointly with a partner or you know, a family member or something like that, and it might be a 60-40 split, then can it automatically work it out as a 60-40? I think that's probably, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
it.
that's
Okay,
part of it. Yeah.
perfect. So we don't actually do the split as such, but we do export it into a spreadsheet. So once the data's in the spreadsheet, you could then add a column, you know, to put in your different percentages. But we have been asked that a few times, so we'll probably put that into the app, because a few people have been asking for that. So it's easy enough to do. We just need to build it into the app.
Yes, and I guess the other part of it is also if you've got sort of 50-50 ownership, but with different partners, can it sort of pick out your 50% from all the different properties and sort of bring them all together, or could it possibly do that in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd have to probably manipulate that within the spreadsheet, because it depends. Most of our landlords have just one. You know, they might have a limited company or a couple of limited companies, or a business partner, like it could be a relative. So it's relatively easy to do it that way. But it sounds like, Colin, you might have quite a few different ownerships. Is that?
That's it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. Okay, well, maybe I could talk to you offline about that, because it's something we could certainly do easily enough. We just have to build it in.
Well, I'm happy to you know, tell each of you each other's email address. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, that's great. Lovely. Thank you.
Like that. I've got another question coming. Can you delegate specific costs or activities, e.g., a property, to a distance manager or a tradesperson or a project?
Yeah, I think what they mean by that is, so you can have as many people as you want logging in. So at the moment, because most of our landlords are, like, you know, relatives or business partners, we just have the same access through the same email and username and login and password. But we are going to be adding in true multi-user capabilities, and what that means is you can then decide what access you want to give people. So for example, if your accountant is logging in, you might want them just to see reporting. If it's a member of staff, you might not want them to see all the finance information. So we are going to be building that in. It's quite a big job, that, because you've got to set the yeah. But at the moment, what most of our, because they're relatively small, you know, it's not small. I mean, some of our landlords have hundreds of properties, but they can be managed by a relatively small amount of people. So so the username and password works fine for them.
Okay. Now, I know you've done a very, very quick whiz through this, because I know you showed me an awful lot more on it. So
yeah.
It was just really to get a flavour of the thing.
Yes.
Do you just want to go back to the login page so you can show people?
Absolutely.
Where they can just try it out with just one property? Yes,
absolutely. And the other thing I just wanted to mention here.
Oh, please, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, just a couple of things. One is, the other thing we're always looking at how we can save our customers time and money. Okay, that's the number one priority. But we're also now looking at how we can make people money. Okay, so hopefully this will get people a little bit excited. So once you sign up a tenancy agreement or add a new tenant to your system, there's going to be a button. This is going to come out in about 2 weeks' time. And there's going to be a button to give you the option to send them a link to sign up to utilities. It's as simple as that. All you need to do, one click, send a link. If they sign up and they take out the utilities, then you'll make £3 per month for as long as the tenant is in the property. So for example, if you had 10 tenants and they all sign up for utilities, that'd be £30 a month, which is probably twice as much as it would actually cost you to use Alphaletz. So that's a really nice way. It's really simple, nothing complicated. You don't have to do anything apart from send them the link. And the tenant will get an option to choose a combined billing type package, or they can just pick, if they just want to use electricity or gas, they can do that as well. So watch this space. We'll be telling you all more about that in a few weeks' time, but that'll be coming very soon.
Yes, I know you've been doing quite a lot of work on this. It's continually evolving, isn't it? So
yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Peter, because that's another advantage of cloud, because literally about every 6 weeks, we're bringing out updates. And the challenge for us is, I mean, we've been building this for 3 years, so it's a very rugged platform already. But as we get more users, we get really good ideas. And the more good ideas we have, we want to take all of that and put it in the system. The challenge you always have as a software team is to keep the simplicity there. So to keep it a really nice, easy to use system without making it too complicated, because if you make it too complicated, people stop using it or just find it too difficult to use, and you know, it doesn't add as much value.
All right. Have we got any more questions while we've got Richard with us? We're going to go on to the white paper in a minute, but Richard, you're more than welcome to hold on and you know, go through that with us as well. But now is the time to grab you. Do you want to remind people of the discount code that you put up there?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Me there.
Yeah.
Yes, extra 5. So and it's based on the annual plans. So if you wanted, for example, the 10 user product, be £150 a year, put in the code, and when there's a wizard which takes you through the sign up process, and you'll see a little button that says add coupon in the payment page. So when you click on add coupon, add in the extra 5, and you'll get that extra discount. Okay.
Now we've got a question come up. I know the answer to it, but you're going to have to give it. How will this integrate with HMRC? So,
yeah, well, that's part of making that tax digital. Okay, so now the making tax digital has already changed once, because it was supposed to be coming out next year. Now it's going to be the year after that. So, the first step of that is, you know, you've got to get your records in a digital format. So obviously we can already do that, and you can store all your documents in our system already. Step 2 is the integration with HMRC. So we've started work on that, but it's very early, because we want to make sure that everything is properly defined by HMRC before we spend too much time on the development side, because it's quite a big job to do that. So we will certainly have it well in advance of 2024. We just don't have it fully integrated yet, because obviously we don't need it yet.
Well, I think it's fair to say as well that HMRC have got a bit of a habit of changing their mind every now and then. And I know even people like Zero, they're not progressing with it at the moment, because they're worried they're going to put a lot of time and effort into it to find it's wrong.
That's exactly the point.
So watch this space. I think it's fair to say also, by the way, although this is crystal ball stuff, it ain't going to move again, because I think they've shifted the date about 3 times now, haven't they? So I can't see it shifting another time.
No, I mean, the one thing we all know, I think, as landlords is it is becoming more complicated to be a landlord, you know, and that's, you know, that's why we need some sort of a system. And but, you know, I also think there's never been a better time to be a landlord in a lot of ways, because house prices are rising, rents are rising, and for those people who, you know, have a good system and have a good structure, and they have the right you know, structure in a, you know, limited company or whatever it is for them, then they're the ones that we find are doing extremely well at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, you can allow for the mix of some in limited company and some not. So someone said, how can we access the sample of the product? So if you go to Alphaletz and just check the spelling that you got there.
Yes, ends with a Z, everybody, just in case you missed that one. It's Alphaletz with a Z. That's it.
Alphaletz.com.
Yeah, alphaletz.com.
And then go to the pricing. And as I say, if you just try one,
you can get started completely free. You can set up one property completely free. If you do take us up on the offer of the extra discount, then all you need to, where was I?
You didn't mean to do that, did
I
you?
didn't mean to do that. If you scroll down on the left, when you're in the app, if you scroll down to the left-hand side, you'll see a little button that says add units. And when you're ready to subscribe or add more units to the plan, just click on that button, add the code, and away you go.
Lovely. All right. Okay. Any more questions from anybody? No. All right. Right,
Thanks,
Richard, if you could just stop sharing your screen for me, I'd be grateful. Thank you very much. So, okay, are you hanging on to join us for the white paper
absolutely.
bit?
Yes.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I've got, let me just put this screen up. So, all technical stuff, this, isn't it? So, right. So what we're doing here, and Ross, do dive in when you need to, because I actually can't see you at the moment. So what we're just going to briefly discuss is the white paper that came out about 6 weeks ago now, middle of July. Sorry, a month ago. The government have been talking about this white paper for absolutely ages. I don't know why they've been talking so long about it, but they have. We were told at the beginning of June that it wouldn't be out till possibly the end of the year or more likely next. And then 2 weeks later, it came out. So, you know, it's obviously a political football. We have no idea what's going to happen with it in the future. All we can tell you is what we know, and what we know is in the white paper. So let's just briefly go through it. So that's the actual white paper. If you go on to our website, go on to the campaigns page. So if you look on the menu at the top, it says campaigns, you'll find one about these are, I'll very quickly go through them, and I'll do them one at a time. So the principal matters it's suggesting are the loss of the Section 21, periodic only tenancies, no fixed terms, the intention to convert all tenancies to periodic, so all existing tenancies, the ability for tenants to be able to give 2 months notice at any time, no special treatment for student landlords, and I can hear people shouting in the background about that one. The need to follow the decent home standard, even though we don't know what it is at the moment, the review for the court system and the eviction process, and a property portfolio, a property portal, and then finally the new property ombudsman. The principal matters, let's go through them one at a time. So we've been banging on about the loss of the Section 21 for a little while. So for those of you who are aware of it, that the Section 21 is the no fault given notice. So it's not the it's often called the no fault, but we tend to call it the no fault given notice. It's used an awful lot. It's quite often it's overused, but our concern, and we've had a campaign running now since before Christmas, and we've been encouraging landlords and members to write to their MPs, and quite a few people have done. Thank you very much. So there's been a bit of traction on this. Now, almost certainly the Section 21 will go in its name like this. That's not to say that it couldn't be replaced with something which is similar to the Section 21. We don't want it, we're not worried if it's going to be called a Section 8B or something like that. But anyway, the concern we've had with it, and what we've been pointing out to MPs in particular, is that some landlords are willing to take on tenants who might be a little bit suspect, shall I say. They're not entirely certain about them, but they're willing to take the risk on the basis they got the Section 21 to back them up. Well, I've had several landlords now say to me, well, I'm not going to be taking those in the future because, you know, without the Section 21, it's not worth the risk. So in other words, any potential future tenant might find it really, really difficult to get a let unless they've got absolutely perfect references. And indeed, this is what appears to be happening in Scotland, where they've been without the Section 21 for a couple of years, I think, isn't it, Ross? So for a while anyway. So there's also, we've had some people say to me, well, those tenants which they've been putting up with for the last few years, well, as soon as they get a date, then I'm afraid they're going to be issuing Section 21s and they're going to be going because they can't afford the risk because they've had problems with them in the past and they don't want problems with them in the future. So what we're suggesting, and you can see this on our campaigns page, so please do have a look at that. We're suggesting a sliding scale of notice, because we agree that it's not fair that if you've got a tenant that's been in your property for a long time, that they got the same notice as someone that's only been there for 6 months. So we're saying the longer a tenant's been in a property, the longer the notice period would be. We're also saying that if they've been in the property for a longer period of time, that they can get some kind of financial recompense for being asked to leave. Do have a look at that. You know, and again, comments are always welcome on this, good or bad. The second one that is being proposed is the fact that they're proposing to do away with fixed tenancies. So there will only be periodic tenancies in the future. When I'm going to repeat again, this isn't definite at the moment. This is what's being suggested. So if it goes through and when they get a date, then this is what will probably happen. So from a particular date, sometime in the future, any new tenancy will only be a periodic tenancy, will not be a fixed term tenancy, i.e. it will no longer be an AST, it'll be an assured tenancy. That also means that that's going to remove, and also at some stage, 12 months after that, they propose to convert all tenancies to the periodic tenancies, which we understand will have the effect of removing the Section 21 on all tenancy agreements. But we're waiting to see the details. They always say the devil's in the detail. One potential consequence of this, as we've said there, is that the council tax at the moment, you have to have what's called an interest in a property to be liable to pay the council tax. And for somebody that's renting the property, that interest in law is deemed to be someone that has a minimum of a fixed term tenancy of 6 months or more, followed by contractual periodic, not statutory periodic. The bulk of tenancy agreements will go on to statutory periodic, not contractual. So by getting rid of the 6 month fixed term, unless they amend the Finance Act, then all landlords will be responsible for the council tax, and effectively you're going to become council tax collectors, which is just what you wanted to hear, isn't it? So so come on, change, thank you. The other matter is that a tenant can give 2 months notice at any time. So they can go in on day one and immediately give you 2 months notice. But you can't give notice. You can only give notice through a Section 8. In other words, you've got to have a ground. And additionally, the grounds that most people use, grounds 8, 10, and 11, which are for rent arrears, currently are for a 2-week notice period. The talk is that there will become a 4-week notice period. So, you know, there's a change there as well. Ground 1, which most of you have probably not ever heard of, is a ground which is there at the moment. So if you want to sell the property, you can have it using ground 1, but it's nigh on impossible to use. I won't go through the details of it, but it's really, really complicated to use and will only be applicable in a very, very small number of cases. So they've been talking for quite some time, certainly since before the white paper came out, about making substantial amendments to ground 1. So if you wanted to redevelop the property, you wanted to sell it, you wanted, or a member of your family wanted to move in, that would be a ground for eviction. Now, one would presume that you're going to have to prove one of those. So again, say, Ross, do jump in any stage you want to and sort of make a comment on this. But I can't imagine that you're going to be allowed to just say, oh, well, I'm going to sell it, evict the tenant, and then properly re-let it. So we guess, go on, Ross, sorry.
I was just about to say, ground 1 obviously isn't the easiest ground to use compared to 8, 10, and 11. If they do redevelop the ground itself, then it's going to have to be done in detail. Obviously, I'd like to repeat what you said at the very start. This is very political rather than legal, which is the sector I'm in. essentially, by the time this gets to a bill and then passed, we fully expect it to be watered down. So take the point above, moving it from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. They might start at 4 weeks as the proposal, but as a give and take, they might just keep it at 2 weeks and pretend that they've given landlords something.
Yeah.
Not because it's already at 2 weeks. I don't see why it would need to increase. And as I said, it sounds good on a headline that you're increasing it to 4 weeks. Yeah, with ground one, hopefully it's good drafting. If it's drafted well, then it can be used. But to your point, Peter, you're going to have to prove it. So it'd be interesting to see if it would be mandatory or discretionary, and whether a letter from a aunt, a nephew, a cousin is enough to show that you're going to have a family member move in. When we first read it, we thought that you can easily have the intention for yourself or a family member to move in at the time of the notice and the time of the hearing. But what's to say that you can't change that intention about 3 days after you've got a possession order? So certainly really haven't thought of, and hopefully they will do before they bring in the bill.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, first of all, ground one at the moment is mandatory, because grounds 1 to 8 are mandatory. Anything beyond 8 are discretionary. So Ross, have you ever used ground one? I've never known it be used.
I considered doing it once for a client and just decided that settling and coming to a deal was a lot easier. Just having been in there beforehand, the interpretation of it saying it in the tenancy.
Yeah. As I said, it's difficult to use. So, I mean, again, I'm going to repeat, this is all, as Ross has said, it's all political, it's all potential. We wait to see. We have put together a response to the government on all of this, which you can see on the campaigns page. We've been asked to present evidence to the Levelling Up Committee, which again we're doing, and we'll go out in the next couple of days, and that'll also be on our campaigns page. So let me just move on, but Ross, do shout it anytime you want to, please do. So I can feel a few temperatures rising, and we might have 1 or 2 people want to jump in on this one. They're saying that student landlords will be treated exactly the same, i.e. no fixed term. So you can't do a 12-month or 10-month fixed term. And apart from purpose-built blocks, which we don't fully understand, because the government is saying that purpose-built blocks can't be used for any other purpose, so therefore they're going to be treated specially. So I can see a few howls coming up from that. This is one of our concerns, is we're already having students who are saying, well, you know, they're most unhappy with this. They may well just change and come out of student accommodation, especially it's not helped with the fact that student numbers are going down. An awful lot of colleges and universities are still seem to be trying to go on and stay online. So, you know, if you're a student, why do you want to pay expensive accommodation when you're going to end up spending most of your time working from home? The other danger with this is with the 2-month notice, if, let's say, for sake of argument, your university says, well, we'll have a couple of months, November, December will be physical, and then the rest of the year will be virtual. Well, they're going to go into your property, give 2 months notice, then go home again in January. So that's a big danger, and you're never going to fill it. We have had a suggestion that it could be that, whereas at the moment a lot of student landlords will tend to be one AST for the whole let, it may go on to more like room lets. Let me just say, first of all, by the way, regardless of the kind of tenancy agreement, I was going to call it an AST, but you're not going to have them in future. So regardless of the kind of tenancy agreement you've got, it makes no difference whether it's an HMO or not. So HMO legislation does not talk about the kind of tenancy agreement. So whether you're on one agreement for all or individual room lets. Now we've got a couple of questions come up. Is there an equivalent to ground one in the new Scottish system? Does it work? Don't know. I mean, Ross, you got any sort of thoughts on that one?
No, not really. Not that I'm aware of. I believe they have a similar similar ground, but I wouldn't be able to say whether actually applies to Scotland or not. And obviously the comparison of the housing market there to here is obviously a lot less examples.
Now, Eric's asked a very good question, which is very pertinent, and it's to do with what we're talking about here as well. At the moment, unless again they change the law, if you've got say for sake of argument 4 people in a property on one let, and one of the tenants gives notice, that ends the agreement for all of them. So again, you could have all sorts of problems that if you've got 4 students in, and one decides to leave and gives notice, what happens to the other 3? Do you have to negotiate a new agreement? Do you have to wait until you get a 4th person? So it's all a bit of a mess at the moment, to put it mildly. So we've got any student landlords out there who want to come in and comment on this, or you're going to keep your powder clean for the moment? Hang on, just got someone else coming in. Let me let them in. Okay, so moving on from student lets, the other matter that's come up is that the statement that all landlords will have to follow the Decent Home Standard. Now, the Decent Home Standard has been around for a very long time, and it's only ever applied to social housing at the moment. But the problem is with the Decent Home Standard as it stands today is it's extremely vague, extremely vague. It's being consulted on as we speak, and it's due to report, well, the consultation is due to end quite soon. These reports, as I'm sure Ross is aware of, these reports can take ages, and I do mean ages. I'm talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 years to come out after the consultation finishes. So it could be they're going to want us to follow a Decent Home Standard with us not knowing what we're going to follow. I mean, at the moment, it says you've got to have, for instance, space to prepare food. It said it's got to be adequate. That's it. What does adequate mean? The only people who love vague words like adequate are the Rosses of this world, solicitors. They can make lots of money with that thing. And, you've got to have appropriate facilities in the appropriate position. It's just all so vague, but it was written 30 years ago. So, of course, it was vague. And the Decent Home Standard doesn't even recognise a shower because it was written before we started using showers. So it's desperately in need of overhaul. And so we're pleased that they're doing a consultation on it, but we're just concerned that they might decide that we've got to follow the Decent Home Standard before we know what it is. Additionally, Minimum Energy Efficiency Standard, which you can't say quickly, MEES, and EPCs, both of those have been consulted on. So they've been consulting on EPCs. Well, we attended several meetings before COVID, so it was a long time ago. So we attended some meetings on EPCs and the way that they're worked out. And basically, the basic thing that they want to look for is currently an EPC looks at the cost of running something. So if you change something in your property in the energy side and it's cheaper to run, then that will improve your EPC. That puts a cap on something like a heat pump, because if you install a heat pump, so if you've got gas heating at the moment and you install an electric heat pump, it will be more expensive to run, but saves carbon. So, they are looking at changing EPCs. They're also looking, as we're sure all aware, MEES at the moment, you can't let out a property with an energy rating of less than E, so an F or a G rating, unless you've got an exemption. There's been a lot of talk about that changing, and it's been trundling its way through Parliament for probably 18 months now. It's a private member's bill, which has been going through, plus BEIS, which is the Business Energy Industry Secretary. Oh, I forgot what the S stands for now. Anyway, whatever it stands for. So the energy people have also written a report on it, which apparently has been bounced around between BEIS and number 10. They've also had a change of civil servants. So that's not going to see the light of day either. So we've really got no idea what's going on with any of that. Right, the next thing is, which we were very pleased about, to review the courts and the eviction process. And that's all it says. So that could mean absolutely anything. Ross, how long do you spend waiting for court time?
I spend way too much time chasing courts. Yeah, as you said, great that they're going to review it, but I've also seen reviews in other parts of what we do, and it's exactly the same court system in place. To be honest, this seems like a throwaway thing that they've had to put in there, because if they hadn't put it in there, the first thing everyone would have said is, this is not going to work in the current system.
Yeah.
And to be honest, they probably kept it vague because they probably haven't spoken to the judiciary or the courts users. To be honest, I think they're trying to mirror what they have now in some way and call it a different name. As you said at the very start, they will want to keep some kind of fast track system, hopefully, because if they get rid of that, then they're going to have court listings that are 6 months down the line, if they don't have an accelerated process in some way.
Yeah. So let me just explain what we mean by that. So section 21, you've got the accelerated proceedings where you don't have to go to court. And what we're calling for are two things. First of all, why can't they introduce that into section 8 grounds 8, 10 and 11 if it's not, you can clearly prove there's rent arrears and it's not contested at all? Why can't you have the same kind of system, which will save a huge amount of court time? And second, we're saying, if you really are going to do away with section 21 and not replace it with anything similar, then you're going to have to do a full overhaul of the courts first to catch up. Otherwise, it's just going to be mayhem. I mean, can you imagine, Ross, converting all the section 21s to section 8 tomorrow? What's it going to do to the courts? It's just going to kill them, isn't it? So,
well, that's it. They won't be able to have enough hearings in the day. Every judge doing possession lists.
No.
As you may know, Peter, and some of you may know, in the summer they have a blitz list in central London, then all the surrounding courts send it to central London. And even that in itself is mayhem, that they try and catch up over summer, and it just causes so many issues.
Yeah.
So they try and do that. I'm not even sure they have the facilities to do that. So it's just simply a case of, it's easier to keep their current system in place and call it another name under section 8. They just need to decide what grounds is that possible for. As you said, it's probably going to be ground 8, and rent arrears that are nowhere near 2 months. We're talking 6 to 12 months, ones that tenants realistically aren't going to be able to afford to bring below 2 months. I think that will be the one that their target.
Yeah. I mean, it's all a bit, I mean, we were a bit tongue in cheek, but we said, but look, if you ask us, if the courts ask us for something, we don't meet it, you shout at us and fine us. Why not do it the other way around as well? Or why don't we have some kind of service level agreement? Can't actually see that happening, but I thought, well, it's got to be worth asking for, isn't it? And then being ignored. But yeah, we wait to see. But we've got a question. Any specialist courts for landlord tenant issues? No. And why I'm able to say quite specifically no is at the time they brought the white paper out, they quite firmly said no housing courts, which we all think is wrong. Because the problem is, with the best will in the world, and Ross must have come across this several times, you'll get a judge who doesn't really understand housing law. I mean, a judge is supposed to know everything about everything, and clearly they can't. And when you come up with something a little bit unusual, unless you're really certain of your grounds, of what, you know, everything you're saying, you're going to lose. It's never good to argue with a judge, is it, Ross? Unless you're really certain what you're talking about. Yeah,
and most of the time, as people that have gone through the process, you try and argue with the judge at your first landlord and tenant hearing, you are just going to get the matter adjourned for a longer one, which will probably be put on a list with someone who does know about possession. Yeah, they said no to specialist courts. There is obviously Stratford Housing Centre. It's not a specialist court. The judges there aren't specialists, but they do try and do a few more possession lists than other ones. I've just seen another question come in. Will be an end to not being able to give notice in the first 6 months of a tenancy? No, is the answer to that. They're not going to get rid of any security of tenure. That would go down like a lead balloon in the news, I think. So they're not going to.
Yeah. Again, by the way, there's a huge element of guessing going on there. But one of the points that we've raised in our documentation is to say a lot of your rhetoric, Mr. Government, is very pro-tenant and anti-landlord. Can you please make it pro-PRS? So, you know, which is both of us in together. The other question we've got there, so if you need to sell the property due to change in your circumstances, would it be difficult to do this? You can't sell it. Well, we don't know. We're being told that if you genuinely want to sell the property, that will be a ground for eviction. But we've got no idea, as Ross has already said, whether it would be a mandatory ground. It is at the moment, but whether it remains a mandatory ground. We've got no idea how long the notice will be. And we've got no idea what proof you've got to give that you're going to sell the property. Whether you've got to have a solicitor's letter or an estate agent's letter to say it's on the market, I don't know. So, you know, sorry to not be able to answer some of these, but these are all the kind of questions that we're trying to ask as well. And we won't get any answers because the government don't know either, quite frankly. So it's just all a bit sad, isn't it, really? So moving on, the other things that they're suggesting is a property portal. We're absolutely fine with that. So what they mean by that is if you go into gov.uk and you ask a question about how to renew your driving license, there'll be a section, more of a specific rental section in there. So if you've got landlord questions or tenant questions, well, as far as we understand, it'll be set up specifically for that. So we're all in favour of that. We have pointed out to them, well, all the landlord associations already do that. So, you know, so there's a little bit of reinventing the wheel. And the other one is a property ombudsman. So we think, again, please forgive me, we don't know for certain, but the suggestion seems to be that if you're a landlord, you'll have to belong to a scheme like an agent does at the moment. And this scheme will allow the tenant to make a complaint about you if you're causing problems. Now, again, we've got no problems with that because a law-abiding landlord will have no problems belonging to a property ombudsman scheme unless it turns out to be frantically expensive, in which case it could be a problem, but, you know, it shouldn't be. We've just questioned, well, there's 2 property ombudsmen already. Why do we need another one? And is it going to be different from the agent's one, or is there going to be, you know, is there going to be something completely different? We just don't know. The other things it's suggesting, only allowing annual rent increases and end the use of the rent review clause. So basically, at the moment, the ways that you can do rent reviews, and I'm sure Ross will shout me if I get this wrong, are by mutual agreement. So if you both agree, yes, the new rent's going to be X pounds, then that's fine. That's a variation to the tenancy. If you've got a rent clause in your AST which says you're going to review the rent every 12 months, say, and you review it, that has been a reason in the past to be able to increase the rent. But it's always, in my mind, I think, a bit suspect, isn't it, Ross? Even now, it's a bit suspect.
Yeah, it's a little bit one of those. I think Section 13 is the way to go. Some tenants I've seen being like, yeah, fine, that's okay. And you can get them to agree, but not everyone has those types of tenants.
But the last one, which is there now, and which they wouldn't have to do any legislation for, is something called a Section 13 notice. And that does only allow for annual rent increases. They're talking about having to give 2 months notice, which is not a problem. So, you know, that's not so much a big deal in our mind. I think where you've got to be careful, again, I'd be interested in your views on this one, Ross, but if you've got a straightforward let where the tenants are responsible for the bills, then that's fine. The rent is X pounds, you pay the bills yourself, not a problem. The problem comes when you've got individual room lets where you need to add in the utility bills. A lot of people, some people say, and I'm going to keep the numbers easy because my brain can't cope with complicated numbers. If the rent is £100, but you make the rent 120 to allow for all the utilities, a lot of people will say it was 120. The problem comes with that is, as we've been seeing recently, where utility bills start rising dramatically, and it makes it really difficult to put the rent up. A better way of doing it, and again, Ross, I'd be interested in your comment on this, is to say, well, the rent is £100, and separately you're being charged, I don't know, £5 for gas and £5 for electricity and £5 for whatever it is. You know, these are the charges which are separate charges. So if tomorrow, as we've been seeing, the gas goes up substantially, then you can say, well, the gas part of it is now going from £5 to £8 or whatever. You got any comments on that one, Ross?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Definitely suggest the latter option.
Yeah.
Obviously, tenants, especially students, like it all in one number, but you put the numbers together and add it up for them, but keep them separate in the agreement, then there should be no issues there. And then obviously, if one needs to be increased independent of the other, makes it a lot easier, and you don't get tenants claiming down the line they didn't know what was going up, their portion of the bills or their rent being unreasonably increased.
Yeah, no, I agree. And going back to students for a moment, just be careful how you deal with students with council tax in particular, because normally, I don't know of anywhere where this doesn't happen, but normally students get the exemption. They've got to claim the exemption. You've got to make sure they do claim it. Otherwise, you, the landlord, might cop for the bill in a year's time. So, right, okay, Richard, thank you very much for Richard's saying he's got to go now. So, Richard, thank you so much for what you did with the Alphaletz demonstration, and hopefully you'll get some business out of that. So, thank you for that. Someone's made a general comment, which is if the ground for sale isn't mandatory, property values would reduce dramatically, which is what happened in the 70s. So for those of you who haven't got a long enough memory for this probably includes you, Ross, but in the 60s, the landlord was king. If you wanted to get somebody out, you just simply put all their stuff on the lawn and told them to leave, which wasn't very fair. And then the 77 Rent Act came along, and suddenly the tenant was king. And, you know, you had capped rents and regulated rents and all sorts of things. And what the government don't seem to realise, and we keep telling them, is, well, the majority of landlords are in it for a business. But they, you know, where it starts becoming unprofitable, well, they'll just go into a different kind of business. And within 10 years, there were just no landlords around. And the Prime Minister of the day, I can't remember her name, but I'm sure it'll come to me later on, sort of basically said, well, where's all the tenants? Not worth it, Prime Minister. It's not worth being a landlord. Consequently, she introduced the 85 and the 88 Act, which gave a more of a level playing field. So I'm sure this will happen again. Yeah, we'll get this white paper all coming into an act in the next year, 18 months or whatever. And then in 10 years' time, another Prime Minister will undo all of it and go back to where we were. By which time, all you good people have moved on and will be renting out boats or marinas or something or another. But anyway, right, moving on. The other one, and please don't ask me to explain this one because nobody understands it, least of all the government, passported deposits. They had that one in for a long time, whereby a deposit would be able to be passported from one landlord to another. When we said how, no answer. We thought they were going to gently drop it, but suddenly it's appeared back in here again. So absolutely no idea how that one's going to work. It could be that we got Steve on the line, somewhere or another, Steve Cox. So it could be that they're forced to take out some kind of insurance. But you see, then you get the problem that this is where I would like Steve to make a comment. Yeah, if the tenant has to take out a tenancy deposit insurance, there's no way of making them or forcing them to renew it at the end of the year. So, and while we're waiting for Steve to come and make a comment on that one, that also is the case with the next one, which is pets, where you're going to be told you have to allow for pets, but the Tenants Fees Act is going to be changed so that to allow for charging for pets insurance. Well, again, you get the same situation. If Ross was my tenant, and he's got as I see in the background, he's got a cat, then I could say to him before he even joins me, you have to have pet insurance. You need to show it to me before I'm even going to give you the keys or anything. That's not a problem at all. But the two problems are, first of all, how can I be sure that Ross is going to renew his insurance after 12 months? And secondly, how do I know he's not just going to cancel it after 2 minutes? So, Steve, do you want to come on and make any comments on this?
Yeah, no, you're spot on exactly what you've said there, Peter. Yeah, I mean, yeah, a tenant can cancel it, take a policy out one day, cancel it the next, or the next week if they wanted to, or they could cancel it a bit prior to the next renewal. Also, in some pet insurance policies, it excludes damage caused to landlords' properties. So that's something that has got to be looked into as well. Exactly. So yeah, there's a lot of things to be looked into on from a pet insurance point of view. Obviously, it's something that we are looking to get included. Should it come to it? So yeah, watch this space. But yeah, it's always never easy.
Interesting enough, as Steve knows, I was actually at Boswell's offices when this white paper finally hit the dirt, and we all went through it, and we all went, pets insurance, how's that going to work? It's not very good now. So.
Yes, exactly right. Yes.
But anyway, we've got a few questions connected to that, Steve. Yeah, a comment, if the tenant can't afford the rent but not the increased utilities, how would they handle arrears? Well, you know, usual problem. No matter how it's done, that's going to be a problem. Some basics. Is there anything in these proposals that the landlord cannot do appropriate vetting of prospective tenants? Not that we're aware of. Is there anything in the proposal to say that landlords has to pay all the bills? No. Right, for single lets, the problem comes with single lets. So you presume you mean by that by room lets when you say single lets. The problem with room lets is that if you got gas, say, into the building, then it will be, and let's keep the numbers easy. You've got 4 rooms, 4 individual tenancies. Well, unless you got the cost of putting 4 meters, so 4 separate supplies and a meter into each room, which is dreadfully expensive, it's normally a lot cheaper for the landlord to pay the whole bill and then to divvy it out afterwards, or, you know, to make an estimation beforehand. We're not aware of any proposals in there that is going to change that. We're not aware of any proposals that say that you can't vet people. I really can't imagine that one coming. Ross, you got any comments on that one? I really can't see that happening.
I can't see that happening. If anything, they want to encourage people to vet their tenants. It's like they want to appear to make it a commercial relationship, essentially, where you check out your business partner before you do a deal with them. If they do bring that in, then I don't know how they can enforce it anyway. To be honest, no. I mean, if they stop vetting, I think we won't be losing 75% of landlords. We'll be losing 99% of landlords. So, and then as we keep saying to central government, you lot are not building enough social housing or council housing or whatever. If a load of landlords decide to leave, no idea where all those poor tenants are going to be housed. Anyway, moving on, before I get shouted up for getting too political. And then the last thing they're proposing is to disallow, i.e. to stop you banning benefits, pets and families. Well, the DSS thing, Shelter took an agent to court about 6 months or so ago, I think, and won, which basically is sort of got the effect of making it illegal for agents, and therefore one presumes, again, Ross will be interested in comment on this, it will have the effect of making it illegal for an advert to say no DSS. I know it's an old-fashioned term, but a lot of people still use it. So you got any comments on that one, Ross? Yeah, that was the decision. It didn't quite deal with the exact of it, but essentially, as you said, in practice, that's what's going to be used. I don't see the courts looking very kindly on some, but I think they saw it as a mild form of discrimination, essentially. So yeah, and as you put in your summary of it, we obviously have the Equality Act. We have other acts that are protecting against those discriminations, which we would never want to see in this industry anyway.
Yeah. So I do urge people to look at what we've said to government, because as Ross has just said, there's certainly for pets, it's been discriminatory for quite some time to say no pets. So unless you've got a good reason, so they don't actually have to change the law on that one. Not letting to families, that's a bit of an old one, really. So I don't quite know how they're going to stop that one. But anyway, Right, going on. So Vash, yes, we have followed that. We've covered the section 21. But we'll come back to the antisocial behaviour in a minute if we can do so. Right, the other things. So how will change the just periodic tenancy affect rent guarantee insurance? Oh, Steve, how does so we did have this conversation actually. So if you've not got 6-month tenancy, Steve, what does that do to rent guarantee insurance? There you go. I can have a drink while you're answering that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, for the rent guarantee insurance to be valid, needs to be obviously you need to check out carry out the necessary checks on the tenants. The way it works in Scotland is that it's pretty much unaffected at the moment, so nothing's really changed. So yeah, it's carry on as we are at the moment. So yes.
So Steve, you personally guarantee all insurances will be absolutely fine. You'll always pay out in the future.
So you're breaking up a bit there, Peter. So
I do remind you, it's being recorded. This.
okay.
Anyway, yeah, Vash has raised a good question. When we talked about the section 21 going, I'd be interested to know how many people have had to use the section 21, had to use it because of antisocial behaviour, because that's where it's been a real problem in the past, proving antisocial behaviour. It's nigh on impossible to prove. So is there anybody out there willing to stick their head above the parapet and say, yes, I've had to do a section 21 for ASB? So Ross, is this something that you're aware of? I know it's something which is...
It's very difficult at the moment. From the wording in the white paper, and as I think you suggest in your response, hopefully that's something they give back with. So obviously they're taking a lot from landlords. Something they can give back is make that process a lot quicker, easier, and just bring the bar down, because the bar at the moment for judges is, well, in judges' opinion, is quite high. That you really have to be antisocial, and
yeah,
we're looking at criminal convictions, things like that, to get this through. So at the moment, I get a lot of clients that come to us, and there's antisocial behaviour, which has led to the complete breakdown of the relationship. So therefore, there's rent arrears, and I just turn around and say, I can put the antisocial behaviour in there, but let's just go rent arrears, as it's going to be easier. And unfortunately, sometimes the rent arrears gets reduced, and you really have to argue this antisocial behaviour. And that's just, in my opinion, is something that needs to be lowered. The threshold, to me, has to be lowered.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, it's
well,
quite...
Again, where we're finding, and again, I will be interested in comments on this one, where it's a particular problems is with HMOs. No matter what kind of agreement you got, where one person can start to be antisocial, and that could be something as simple as taking someone else's milk. So, but then he just starts to grow and grow. The problem is the other tenants in that property aren't willing to report the antisocial tenant, and they're certainly not willing to put anything in writing. So, one of the things we're asking for is there's got to be some kind of anonymized system, so that if somebody wants to give a statement, they can do. Right, we've got a question about pet insurance. I think you're coming back on the line again, Steve. Pet guarantee insurance, my expectation is getting tenants to take it as they would need to assign the benefit to ensure the landlord gets paid. Easy to add this to permitted tenants' fees or to allow landlords additional week on deposit. Well, again, it's one of the things we recommended is to, if they wanted to take a pet, that yes, we can take a higher rent, but really it just comes back to the same thing as we were mentioning earlier on, doesn't it, Steve? That if you're asking the landlord, correct me if I'm wrong in this, the landlord can't take out insurance against the tenant's pets, even if it's worth taking out. And secondly, you can't insist on the tenant taking it out.
You're fine with that. Also, and I mean, an issue would be is that obviously if the tenant would need to take the insurance out, as you say, so the tenant would need to take the insurance out, as you say, but then the damage then caused, the payment would then go to the tenant. So any payment would then go to the tenant, and then is there any guarantees that they will forward it back onto the landlord?
That's a very good point, actually. Not one I thought of before, you see. I knew I invited you for a reason.
I'm here for there's one reason. There's one reason.
Right, thanks for that. A question which has come up before. Sorry, if a property's leasehold says no pets, where do we stand? We're guessing, because at the moment, if something's in your lease, you have to represent that in your tenancy agreement. And if it's how can I put it? If it's unlawful, presumably again, Ross, I'll be interested in a comment from you on that one. So if something's in your lease which is unlawful, can you insist on that going into your tenancy agreement?
It's a difficult one. It's one of those where when they actually enact it, we'll be able to advise a little bit more. But it'll be what your lease says. So obviously a lease is never going to say just no pets. Hopefully the lease says without reasonable written consent, not to be withheld unreasonably, things like that. It may take an extra step of you have to then go to the freeholder and say, as you know, I have to put this into my tenancy agreement, or I can no longer ban them in my tenancy agreement, and therefore if the freeholder unreasonably withholds amending the lease or just allowing you and giving you written consent, then it's probably that situation. I can see a lot of freeholders just knowing about the no longer being able to ban and just allowing it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, someone's said invite the tenants to pay the cost of amending your lease, but at the moment you can't, because the Tenants Fees Act would stop that. Someone further up, hopefully you can all see these messages. As I said, if you go to the chat box and open it, you'll see all these messages. Someone's put in there, will this actually happen? Because there's conversations going on in the political arena at the moment about the fact that A, levelling up was a Boris Johnson thing, and B, that the two contestants, I'm trying to think what to call them then, the two contestants have not mentioned or hardly mentioned anything to do with the property, with the rental at all. The only thing we got from Liz Truss was from about 2019, where she did a tweet where she said she wanted everyone to be able to buy their own properties. So I don't know if she's talking about personally giving them the money for it, but anyway, that was just what she was saying there. If I were a gambling man, which I'm not, will it actually happen? I believe it will happen, because this is being levelling up or not. This is being bandied about since before that department was called the Levelling Up Department. So certainly getting rid of the Section 21, etc. So a lot of it is political. And it's interesting to note that, again, from a political point of view, that the politician who's been leading this has never been the housing minister. It's actually been the rough sleeping minister, Eddie Hughes, and he's still in post. So he's still very much seeing this through. And no matter what happens with Eddie Hughes, I would imagine he's going to really champion this. So, as I said, if I was to make a guess, yes, I think it will go ahead. Right, last lot, just to go on to some other things that we're recommending. Call it what you want, some kind of property MOT. So this will sort of go along with, hang on, we've got a question come in. Can I just clarify that the right for a landlord to sell a rental property in future will continue to remain? Probably. I almost certain, I think I'll stick with neck out again to say that government were making noise before the white paper came out to say that they would amend Ground 1 to allow for sale. So, you know, I'll be very, very surprised if they don't on that one, because they realise that Ground 1 is really difficult to use. But as Ross says, we don't know if it's going to be mandatory or not. That's the question. So going back to property MOT, call it what you want. But we just feel it would be nice to have some kind of documentation there, particularly if and when the Decent Home Standard comes in and whatever that covers. With the Decent Home Standard and a property MOT, you wouldn't need wholesale licensing. Then we're recommending some kind. They want passports and things for landlords. Why not a passport for a tenant? You know, something showing that they've been a good tenant, a bad tenant, or whatever. It probably, and again, I'll be interested in your comment, Ross, it probably couldn't show credit history, because it probably wouldn't be allowed to put credit history on a tenant's passport. What do you think?
I doubt they're going to force tenants to put that information on there. you get a legal challenge immediately. So straight away.
Yeah.
But I agree, completely great idea to show the history. And if someone doesn't have a passport, then you obviously look on that, and without good reason, then that's how you make your decision.
And a particular bet noir of mine, and particularly, I know Mike Stimpson's very keen on this one as well, is, and this is happening a lot in Portsmouth. So again, I'd be interested, I'd be very, very interested in comments on this, whereby a lot of local authorities have been taking individual room lets and rebanding them as council tax band A, which ends up increasing the council tax element for the tenant by a substantial amount. It could be up to 10 times the amount. So, and it tends to be, this is a bit, I know this is a bit of a generalized statement, but it tends to be that the people who go into HMOs tend to be the poor of society. I mean, I know there's a lot of professionals, etc., but you know, it's called affordable housing. So by bumping up their council tax part means that they feel duty bound to pay the council tax and not pay their rent, or not pay all of their rent. So you know, it's just not fair, that one. I've got a question coming. Can a tenant's passport be forged? Don't know. We've not seen it yet. So you know, anything can be forged. So it's just a question of making sure it's done properly. But thank you for that question. As we already said, if we do get a proper decent home standard and a property portfolio, or a property MOT, then we don't need full-scale licensing. Licensing was originally introduced in the 2004 Act for a property or a group of properties that were being poorly managed. And if they were being poorly managed, then the local authority had the ability to license them and to say to the landlord or landlords, you have to improve the management of this property. If you don't improve it, we will take the license away from you. And you then will not be able to let that property out, or you'd have to get a new manager. We've got no problems with licensing done like that. Where we got the problem is just wholesale licensing, which is clearly done to earn money. Anyway, I'll get off my little soapbox now. So, and the other thing we've asked for is some kind of process for abandoned properties. It was in the 2016 Act. It was never enacted properly. They've also now got rid of it. It was a very, very poor bit of legislation, not enacted, and they got rid of it. And we said to them, well, just rewrite it. It cannot be beyond the wit of a civil servant to rewrite the abandoned property thing. Because at the moment, I know an awful lot of agents will put an abandonment notice in a property. Well, they're unlawful. Ross, do you get agents who have been stung by this?
Yeah, one of those where they don't know what they're doing, essentially. But that can just be some agents not looking up properly, half-heartedly looking at legislation, not keeping up to date. We don't deal with that many abandoned properties, to be honest with you, Peter, but it's one of those where if they rewrite it, there's the same chance that they're going to write it poorly again. And this is what I said earlier, the redrafting of the Section 8 needs to be done well if it's going to happen, because otherwise it'll be an absolute mess.
Yeah, no, I quite agree. We've got a nice technical one there. CT exemptions for those on housing benefits, so net cost to council. Rodney, do you want to come on and explain that one? While you're coming on, what's the difference between a decent home standard and HHSRS? The decent home standard, as I say, has been around for over 30 years now, probably more, and applied only to social housing. In the Housing Act, they tried to improve on it, and they brought in HHSRS. So if you want, you could almost describe the new decent home standard that we've not seen yet as taking over from HHSRS, but we don't know. So anyway, so Rodney, do you want to come on and explain that one, or are you being shy?
Yeah, no, I was just saying that council tax, if you read all the small print on the back of your council tax bill, it will say that if you're on some sort of housing benefit, there'll be exemptions. So the councils don't care that it's going to affect the less well-off in society, because they're probably already funding their housing anyway.
Yeah, but I thought that had changed because the way that it's funded by central government substantially changed. So it does affect them, I think you'll find, but I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. I don't know if we've got anybody who knows anything about the way that local authorities get refunded for the exemptions that they give. I know it did change about 5 or 6 years ago. So anyway, all right, okay. Right, okay, then the last slide is just be careful. Make sure you get references, please, and consider getting a guarantor. And if you get a guarantor, reference them, and think very seriously about getting rent guarantee insurance. Mr. Cox, you can do a nice deal for us, can't you there? Don't let arrears build up before chasing them. The reason I put that one in is just really based upon the comments and the questions we get on our helpline. The number of times that we get people who say that they've let the arrears go for some time. I mean, it's not at all unusual to get people on the helpline say, oh, I've got a tenant with a rent arrears of 6 months. Well, why do you let it build up? Because if you let it build up like that, you stand no chance of ever getting it back. I've got a question there about, I'll read that one about insurance in a moment. Deal with antisocial behaviour immediately. As I said to you, if it's something very, very minor, like, you know, somebody's nicking my milk, deal with it, because that's the kind of thing which can sort of get really, really difficult. Make sure you document everything and be professional. And then that's, now what's the question? Buildings insurance of 40-unit leasehold property specifies extra cost if flats less to students. Oh, really? Lee says leaseholder does not increase insurance risk. Can landlords exclude lets to students on these grounds? Right, 2 questions there. So Ross, again, it goes back to this question of something that's in the lease. And in this case, I've never known a lease which says no students, but there you go. What do I know?
I've seen one myself. But yeah, it's one of those where you play a fine line. You walk the line on that one, because all you take is one overly smart student who really wants to go after you, and they kick up a fuss on that. I think you have to be very careful with excluding tenants on those grounds.
And then the question one that it's the insurance that excluded students, not the lease. Oh, Steve, it's all your fault, apparently. Insurance sometimes excludes students, is that right?
Well, some.
Come on, don't blether, you're being recorded.
No, I know. I'm just when we get to quote for a freeholders block, the insurance company will ask the type of tenants being housed. Now, the freeholder's not necessarily going to know who's housed in there. They could be anybody. So from that point of view, it's irrelevant from the insurance point of view if they're working, if they're students, whatever, from a freeholder's point of view. So I don't think they can exclude it from
discriminatory as well, isn't it? It's a bit like mortgage companies saying no benefit tenants. Well, if the benefit system's working correctly, you won't know you've got a benefit tenant.
No, exactly right. So yeah, it's the same situation there. So freeholder won't know who's housed in that property. So yeah, I can't see how that can hold up. Really can't see how that one can hold up. No.
Anyway, well, thank you, Steve, for that.
Does that help?
Right. That's a very, very quick overview of the white paper. Loads of questions there. Thank you so much for everybody. We got any more questions? We've gone well over the time, but normally we chop it off at 3 o'clock. But Steve, you want to say something?
I was just going to say, just on that one, if just as a bit of a sales pitch, if you want me to look at the insurance for it, I'm more than happy to look at it. That's to Gillian.
Whoever it was. Oh, Gillian. So there you go. You got your own personal date with Steve. What more could you want? Got to be worth it for that alone, isn't it? So. Okay. Any more questions for any more?
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. As we said, we're recording it. So in the next few days, I'll put it together, and all of you have logged into this, I'll make it available to you. So thank you very much. Do send questions. Do have a look at Alphaletz. It's well worth looking at. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye for now.